Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. Russia protested Biden's use of the term war criminal when referring to President Putin, warning the White House that Russia-U.S. relations are on the verge of breaking. The Kremlin called the U.S. ambassador to Russia to voice its displeasure. Investors are more concerned about whether Russia can successfully pay interest on its investments. J.P. Morgan said that foreign investors held a total of about $38 billion of Russian local currency sovereign debt before the outbreak of the Ukraine crisis, with some maturities still unpaid. The biggest air disaster of the last 2 decades has occurred in China. The circumstances of the plane crash were so unusual that expert analysis did not rule out man-made damage or a missile. Okay, let's get into it. Last week, Joe Biden referred to Russian President Vladimir Putin as a war criminal over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On March 21st, the Russian Foreign Ministry summoned the U.S. ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan, to protest Biden's statement and warned of a possible break in U.S. Russia relations. Several senior White House officials, including Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, have also started referring to Putin this way. On Monday, Russian Foreign Affairs handed Sullivan a letter of protest against the unacceptable name-calling. The letter condemned Biden's remarks as incompatible with his status and said that Biden's remarks and the U.S. sanctions against Russia have brought relations to the verge of a collapse. The letter stated, hostile actions taken against Russia will meet decisive and firm pushback. The Russian side also asked the U.S. Embassy in Russia to ensure the smooth operation of Russian embassies and consulates in the United States. The White House has refused to find Russia guilty of crimes in Ukraine, saying only that a legal assessment of those acts is underway. However, after Biden referred to Putin as a war criminal, Secretary of State Antony Blinken also said he personally agreed with that statement. On March 21st, EU member states also condemned Russian forces for war crimes in Ukraine, but appeared reluctant to impose new sanctions on Russia as a result. The International Criminal Court in Netherlands says it's collecting evidence of possible Russian war crimes in Ukraine, but neither Russia nor the United States recognize the jurisdiction of the court. Russian bond investors are closely monitoring the payment situation. After Russia's aggression against Ukraine triggered international sanctions, markets are questioning whether the Russian government can meet its debt service obligations. Investors in Russian government debt received $117 million in interest on the government's bonds last week, but with much of the Russian central bank's $630 billion in foreign exchange reserves already frozen, the market is concerned about Russia's ability to continue to pay its debts on time. Russia has accumulated an additional $4.5 billion in Treasury principal and interest payments, which is due before the end of the year, including a $66 million interest payment due this Monday, a $447 million debt payment due on March 31st that must be paid in U.S. dollars, and a $2 billion debt due on April 4th, which is also Russia's biggest debt this year. The debt due on Monday, as well as a debt due on March 28th, can be paid in rubles instead of dollars. A 15-day notice is required if the debt is to be paid in an alternative currency, but the Russian Treasury has not yet issued a notice to that effect. This suggests that Moscow still plans to pay in U.S. dollars. International rating agency Fitch Ratings said last week that Russia is at risk of default if it does not repay its debt in the next 30 days. In the event of a default, Russia will be unable to participate in the international lending market until it repays investors' losses. Another issue is that the economic sanctions, including a ban on investors trading with the U.S. Ministry of Finance, the central bank, or the State Wealth Fund. On March 2nd, the U.S. Office of Foreign Asset Control temporarily authorized investors to receive interest and bond payments from the Russian sector mentioned earlier. However, the deadline for this authorization is May 25th, after which Russia has approximately $2 billion in offshore sovereign debt maturing through the end of 2022. The first payment after the Foreign Asset Control Authorization deadline is on May 27th, which JP Morgan analysts said is a key date. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Theresa Tam, said on March 18th that the federal government is actively reviewing all of its vaccine mandates with an eye to ending rules that force people to get COVID-19 shots. The federal government currently demands that all federal public servants and workers in federally regulated industries and the transportation sector and members of the traveling public get vaccinated if they want to go to work, to fly, or to travel by train. Dr. Howard New, who was Canada's Deputy Chief Public Health Officer, said that the federal government and the provinces are in a transition phase and will be putting less of an emphasis on forcing people to make certain health choices. Tam said all federal vaccine mandates are now under review. While scientists and vaccine developers initially thought that the first 2 doses would reduce the spread of the virus, the emergence of new variants with different characteristics has turned the idea on its head. She said that expanding the vaccine mandates to cover a 3rd dose would be difficult because eligibility for the 3rd dose varies by age. But more people over the age of 50 would need to get a booster shot. Tam said, it becomes a very complicated algorithm and it's hard to make policy. As we learn more about the virus and the jabs, we still can't be certain about how all of this is going to play out. Before we move on to the recent suspicious plane crash, please like and share this video to help us spread the truth. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, please double check to make sure you are still subscribed. Many of our viewers have said that they don't get notifications from YouTube about our videos anymore. So please follow us on Gab, Telegram, and Getter. The links are in the description below. Okay, let's get back into it. A China Eastern Airlines Boeing 737 crashed on March 21st in Guangxi province on its way to Guangzhou, sparking a mountain fire. The cause of the accident is yet unknown. A total of 132 people were on board, including 123 passengers and 9 crew members. Flight data show that the aircraft took off and flew steadily until 2:20 p.m. when it suddenly lost altitude. Boeing is collecting more information. Boeing has been plagued by safety problems with the 737 MAX airliner for some time. The airliner is now banned in China and has not yet resumed flights. The plane was a 737-800 series. According to Chinese media reports, this airliner was less than 7 years old. Local residents told reporters that the plane appeared to have completely disintegrated. Search and rescue efforts are continuing. Chinese official media said the airline has confirmed that there were no foreign passengers on board. This is the worst air disaster in China in more than a decade. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board said on March 21st that it has appointed a senior aviation safety investigator as an authorized U.S. representative to investigate the crash of the Eastern Airlines passenger plane. Representatives from Boeing, General Electric, and the Federal Aviation Administration will serve as technical advisors. Under an international agreement, the United States can be a representative party to the crash investigation because the plane was built in the United States. Reuters reported that the probability of a crash during the cruise phase of a flight is relatively small. Boeing said last year that between 2011 and 2020, only 13% of fatal commercial airplane accidents worldwide occurred during the cruise phase, while 28% occurred during the final phase of flight and 26% occurred during the landing phase. Li Xiaojin, a Chinese aviation expert, said usually the aircraft is on autopilot during the cruise phase, so it's hard to understand what's happening. AFP reported that Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping was shocked by the accident. He urged China's civil aviation authorities to quickly and thoroughly investigate the cause of the crash. AFP said that this showed an unusually quick response. According to civil aviation tracking website FlightTrader24.com, the plane plunged precipitously from the altitude of about 29,000 feet to 2,900 feet. Someone on Twitter posted footage of the plane's fall captured by a car recorder. Some experts say that aircraft generally have a protection mechanism. If an accident occurs, the flight altitude should not be straight down unless the protection device is removed. It is rare to see a straight downward flight under normal conditions. Li Han-ming, a person in the civil aviation industry, said that there are generally several reasons that a plane would drop sharply from a cruising altitude. One is that the pilot intends to commit suicide, or it was hit by a foreign object such as a missile. Other problems are aircraft design or maintenance. Another expert offered that the pilot might be not in control or the craft might have lost power. There are also deliberate human problems before it would nosedive. Generally, aircraft have 2 or 3 sets of auxiliary systems. If one fails, there's a backup system. Only when the aircraft is out of control, then it may suddenly fall nose first. There is news that China Eastern Airlines is under pressure to tightly control or even cut maintenance costs due to its huge financial losses, attributing the crash to the company's squeeze on aircraft maintenance costs. However, the news was denied by an authoritative source at Eastern Airlines. Our prayers go out to the family members of those on board. Next, I want to take a moment to read and respond to your comments. The first comment is from one of our recent episodes discussing Rand Paul's request to fire Fauci. I put the link in the description below. Joan Karasinsky commented, "Fauci should be removed. I don't believe his focus is on protecting the health of Americans. His ethics and personal conflicts of interest are questionable. He is too involved in big pharma and manipulative of scientists and research. His personal semantics and prevaricating regarding gain of function is seriously suspicious, particularly regarding the Wuhan lab." Thank you, Joan, for sharing your thoughts. Whatever happened between NIH and the Wuhan lab must be made clear once and for all. Marcy King wrote, "Hats off to the brave officer indeed. I'm sure it took a lot of guts to knowingly and intentionally take the hit of an oncoming car moving at such rapid speed. The officer was probably prepared to die to save the crowd. Thankfully, it looks like her guardian angel rode shotgun to keep her safe. I wish this woman a speedy recovery. Who knows how many families were spared the grief of losing their loved ones thanks to the actions of the brave policewoman. Something to think about when the topic of defunding the police comes up." Thanks, Marcy. I agree, the officer was truly courageous, and I'm sure all the runners are glad of it. HR commented, "Maybe when we actually have power after the midterms, we can impeach Mayorkas for real." Thank you, HR. Maybe after the midterms, there's a lot of things that we can change. Trish wrote, "I swear I never believed their numbers to begin with. Too many lies have been going on. We'll never hear this so-called mistake ever mentioned on the news." Thanks, Trish. I'm glad we were able to bring you the update and so that people can find out that not as many people died from COVID as they first reported. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe this video and share it with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.